Welcome! This video is of my inaugural lecture as lector professor in multi-level regulation at the Hague University of Applied Sciences, TUAS. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we couldn't organize the inaugural lecture in person the way we wanted to. This is a short version of my lecture. I hope you enjoy listening. Before I start, I would like to express my gratitude to those who helped me to arrive where I am now. The board of TUAS for appointing me as lector in multi-level regulation, the BRV faculty dean for being instrumental in developing and supporting the research group, my colleagues at TUAS and beyond, students, family, and friends. You are all great and inspiring supporters. Thank you. Let me begin by first giving some very broad examples of how states are increasingly seen as illegitimate. Take, for example, the recent Black Lives Matter movement in the US. The movement contests the authority of formal institutions, such as the police, due to its brutality against Black communities. The Black Lives Matter movement developed in response to the state's failure to deliver racial justice and security to all of its citizens, including minorities and underrepresented groups. Or consider the politics of climate change. Many leaders do not have sustainable visions to combat climate change to the detriment of citizens and nature. More specifically, let's recall Donald Trump's withdrawing on behalf of the US from the Paris Agreement on climate change and mitigation. Jair Bolsonaro and his policies leading to the Amazon rainforest deforestation. Or the failure to prevent and manage the historical bushfires in Australia in the recent past by the government of Scott Morrison, all having disastrous effects on wildlife, the climate, and health of citizens. Finally, let's consider the public perception of many regional and international organizations, such as the United Nations, the European Union, or the World Trade Organization. The rules, policies, and regulations made in those institutions by highly specialized experts are too convoluted for a non-specialist to understand. Consequently, citizens, professionals, and students feel puzzled when studying or applying those rules, be it for an exam, in an internship, or in professional practice. They simply do not know how those rules translate into their daily tasks. These are big and far-reaching examples, and my point is certainly not to dig deep into any of them. My point is merely to show one common thread: a widespread lack of perceived social legitimacy and practical understanding of the contemporary formal rules centered on states. How do those examples connect with multi-level regulation? Let me first explain what multi-level regulation means. Multi-level regulation is a concept that focuses on how the rules by which we live and work are made today. While in the past, rulemaking was seen as monocentric, having its main center in the state, multi-level regulation developed as a polycentric field to explain how actors other than states, for example, companies, the EU, the UN, global standardization bodies, make rules at national, regional, international, and global levels. So, what is the problem with multi-level regulation? The problem unfolds in 3 steps. First, I describe the puzzle. Second, I invite us to rethink the historical context. And third, I explain how those historical lessons can help us find a way out of our present impasse. Let me start by describing the puzzle. Multi-level regulation was designed as a new solution to address the illegitimacies of states and state actors, much like those illustrated by the examples I used at the start, by incorporating the practices of non-state actors into its field. The problem is that multi-level regulation focuses precisely on states, importing most legitimacy problems related to states at all levels. Consequently, most new regulatory solutions today suffer from the same concerns with legitimacy as those coming from states. They are disconnected from people. What is more, most regulatory actors, whether they are states or non-state actors, see themselves as illegitimate no matter what they do. As it is presently practiced and understood, I don't believe there is a way out of this legitimacy problem. Which brings me to the larger historical perspective. Part of the problem is how we, researchers, practitioners, and students have been thinking about contemporary multi-level regulation, its origins, and its social capital. By social capital, I mean a shared understanding of rules and values through which citizens connect with society and professionals connect with professional practice. These include trust, cooperation, and reciprocity, just to mention a few. The problem is that we rarely look at rules apart from their legal function, and we rarely return to the social origins of rules before the nation state. And this is precisely where the roots of the social capital underlying contemporary rules can be found. Today, I want us to take a bigger historical perspective and rethink our approaches to multi-level regulation. What I want to argue is that we have ready at hand an enormous reservoir of history, practices, and ideas that can help us think through contemporary legitimacy problems. Namely, all those practices which preceded the capture of law by the modern state system. And those practices can be found in the historical alternative dispute resolution ADR practices that are largely forgotten or ignored today. To summarize, the dominant conceptual frame today, that is state representing formal rules and then multi-level regulation, is misleading. Instead, we need to think in terms of a larger historical frame. That is, historical ADR representing social values, then state, and then multi-level regulation. Which brings me to the third normative step. I think, and this is how I would like us to look forward, that we can learn a lot about what multi-level regulation is today and how it can be improved by going back to those historical ADR practices. But let me pause again to explain what ADR is. Alternative dispute resolution, often referred to as ADR, is understood today as any means of solving disputes outside courts. Some examples of ADR concern arbitration, when two or more parties submit their dispute to a private arbitrator who determines the result in the form of a binding award. Another example is negotiation, meaning that parties to a dispute negotiate the result among themselves. Mediation is another example of ADR. It involves a neutral mediator facilitating negotiations and communications between disputing parties. And there are many more ADR variants. The point And to some extent also the problem is that all these ADR variants are now mainly used by lawyers in the context of adversarial court proceedings. And as a result, the most common public perception of ADR is that it is another complex state-made tool that serves elites and experts rather than people. But ADR goes far beyond formal law. ADR has been developed and used by traditional communities throughout human history to prevent and solve disputes and also to preserve social harmony and peace, ensuring sustainable growth of traditional communities before states were created. As such, ADR goes to the core of multi-level regulation, as it helps to reconnect with the social capital behind rules, meaning how rules were made, practiced, and accepted as legitimate. Before I present how we can learn from ADR today, let me first sketch some historical uses of ADR. The history of ADR goes back to the practices of early societies. When we look at Asian history, the roots of ADR can be seen in how Confucian philosophy promoted social harmony based on diversity rather than individual perceptions of justice. Similarly, the traditional African philosophy and community dispute resolution systems like Ubuntu or Gacaca promote grassroots solutions to advance dialogue, peace, and restitution. Here, the prominent role is for community elders who either facilitate a dialogue within the community to end a dispute or make decisions on their own with a view on the values and goals of the community as a whole. We learn about the resolution of trade disputes through arbitration as early as Marco Polo's caravans and in disputes between Greek and Phoenician traders. This follows in the medieval times, where arbitrators solved trade disputes based on commercial usages rather than black letter laws. These are only few selected examples of historical use of ADR, but there are many more. The major point is that ADR, in its original forms, served more, let's say, noble or communal goals rather than one-on-one resolution of disputes as it is practiced today. It aimed at strengthening social and group interactions by emphasizing trust, dialogue, and social harmony. To summarize my normative argument, if we return to those early ADR practices and study their historical role in maintaining social and communitarian harmony in traditional communities, we can learn a lot for our contemporary times. How could this longer view help us to move things forward? ADR offers vast benefits for the professional practice, citizens, and for socio-political challenges today. Regarding the quickly changing professional practice, many contemporary organizations, including companies, international organizations, and universities, hire ombudspersons to solve internal disputes or invest in their own conflict management systems, known as dispute system design. Those organizations also use ADR as a model for organizational change in the management structures, so-called change management. In sum, ADR helps build collaborative professional cultures at all levels by placing social capital at their center. What is more, and at more individual level, ADR skills such as active listening, good communication skills, ability to generate trust, and a collaborative attitude correspond to the 21st century skills of adaptive and forward-looking professionals that are in high demand in the labor market today. Those skills are required in many different professions. Obviously, ADR skills are required for mediators, arbitrators, and negotiators, but also for social workers and municipal employees, psychologists, historians, anthropologists, cultural and communications experts, and many, many more. ADR is also relevant for everyday lives of citizens. Here, ADR goes to the core of open society by emphasizing the importance of empathy, trust, and collaboration. Take, for example, community mediation or negotiations to address misunderstanding with neighbors over nuisances, or even to address family conflicts that disrupt family lives. Those negotiations proceed according to different cultural models in which different people emphasize their importance of different social values, such as taking control of problems, trust building, restoration, and moving things forward. In some, ADR practices, once reconnected with their early social and cultural models, can be used to help to improve the quality of lives of many citizens, empowering them with social tools to solve their problems on their own. Increasingly, and this is rather a novel development, ADR is also used to address serious social and political challenges, such as family violence, administrative procedures in the context of migration, the marginalization of youth from disadvantaged communities, or racial discrimination, especially in the context of the recent crisis in this regard in the US. More specifically, ADR, which has been frequently used in the context of divorce proceedings, has recently been encouraged to address family violence. ADR is also increasingly used, still mostly as a pilot, in refugee camps. Here, ADR has great potential in helping to reduce the current social gap in domestic violence programs and administrative migration procedures that are largely based on patriarchal and formal principles, often favoring the oppressors and state authorities rather than the weaker parties. Also, since 1980s, ADR in a form of peer mediation has been used in about 25% of American schools to help pupils address their conflicts and develop their collaborative skills. Regarding racial discrimination, most recently, different ADR bodies issued calls for funding to develop programs promoting better dialogue through ADR between citizens and governmental authorities, including the police. Of course, there are risks that ADR will also be used to a disadvantage of set individuals, and the researchers like us need to be well aware of those risks. This is why we need a systematic study of those ADR practices to monitor their development and formulate best and better practices in the context of socio-political challenges. These are only selected examples of the potential benefits of the use of ADR in daily activities of citizens, in local communities, in the workplace, in the context of human and professional development of pupils and students, and for contemporary social and political problems. Viewers of this lecture can think of examples of similar use of ADR in their own backyard, be it as lecturer, student, practitioner, manager, or a citizen. In sum, my vision that I shared with you today is that we can reconnect the rules and the people by expanding the historical perspective of multi-level regulation and returning to forgotten and ignored ADR practices. This hopefully will help us to improve the study of multi-level regulation, professional practice, and society. How? By making the study of multi-level regulation more inclusive than it is now, by building more collaborative professional practice and governance mechanisms, and by helping citizens and vulnerable groups to reconnect with the rules through the social values. And these are 3 goals that are the main goals of the research group's multi-level regulation research agenda. So that is the big picture. Now, I want to turn to consider the work that we will do. The Lectorate Multi-Level Regulation is a new research group at TUAS. The lectorate consists of researchers, lecturers, and students affiliated with different study programs, including but not limited to the international and European law, Habberechten, and European studies. Since April 2020, the lectorate has its home at the Center of Expertise Global Governance. We also collaborate with external partners based locally and internationally, be it practitioners or academics. We really see ourselves as being on a mission. And like all groups on a mission, we have a motto and a manifesto. Our motto is ADR for the 99%. First, who are the 1%? As noted, contemporary multi-level regulation is still centered on states, on elites, on technocrats, and what is more, these are mostly Western states, Western elites, and Western technocrats. But for the majority of the world's population, for students and practitioners, those regulatory orders and technocratic rules that we think about, that we practice, and that we prepare students for are not the rule. They are the exception, the 1%. We don't see ADR as an alternative to the current solutions. Rather, we see it as a tool that is inherent in our contemporary society, education, and public and professional fields. So far, ADR has been studied and practiced mostly by the 1% of those who are lucky to get into the ADR field. We focus on the missing 99%. What do we mean by that? We mean the 99% in the sense of a protest against the dominant study of contemporary multi-level regulation originating in Western states, and the need to speak to the vast majority of those who are excluded. Here we work with students, lecturers, professionals, and citizens from different fields and levels of expertise, including laymen, to increase the diversity of contemporary multi-level regulation through the study of ADR. We mean the 99% as the missing practical part of contemporary multi-level regulation. Here, we investigate whether, and if so how, ADR can serve as a model for collaborative practices in contemporary multi-level regulation. Finally, we mean the 99% as the missing social part of contemporary multi-level regulation. By studying the history of ADR practices and the social values lying at the core of those practices, we want to reconnect the contemporary multi-level regulation with social values, offering tools for contemporary social and socio-political problems. As I mentioned earlier, our research group is positioned within the Center of Expertise Global Governance. At the center, we study global governance as a network of local practices of different state and non-state actors who shape global problems from the bottom up, such as street-level practitioners in municipalities, ministries, or other state agencies, youth activists, or simply citizens engaged in community building. Studying ADR with a historical view to contemporary problems couldn't be more relevant in the context of global governance today. ADR can help us reconnect with the social capital of contemporary global governance, which is essential in reforming global governance by giving it its rightly deserved human face. That's our research group. But what is really special here are the attachments of the group to TUAS. Let me bring this lecture too close by pointing to the connections with TUAS. TUAS is an excellent place for our research. Our core educational and research goals at TUAS are inclusiveness, diversity, and internationalization. These goals go to the core of ADR, allowing us to explore the origins of contemporary multi-level regulation with students and lecturers from around the world, representing a diversity of geographical, ethnical, and national backgrounds.
I'm Suela Dervishi, a fourth-year international and European law student. I joined the multi-level regulation student projects in March 2020 as a coordinator of the projects. The project started as a student-led initiative with a focus on alternative dispute resolution and now have taken the form of podcasts, blog posts, internship database, and research. We specifically aim to connect students, practitioners, professionals, and also enthusiasts in an environment where each can learn from one another. What I like most about this project is that I work with a wonderful team of 5 student project leaders who are really enthusiastic and also hardworking. And that is also reflected in every project that we are working on. I've also noticed that I've developed a variety of my skills, such as public speaking skills, teamwork skills, project management skills, etc. I invite every student, every professional, every practitioner interested in alternative dispute resolution to join us.
My name is Hanna Falkiewicz. I'm a fourth-year student of International and European Law program. I joined the multi-level regulation student project in March 2020. My role in the group is a research assistant, so usually I'm the one who's looking for the content for social media. From time to time I'm writing the blog posts, and also recently I started researching for the most important arbitration cases that give some overview of what's important in the field and what's going on. I love about the multi-level regulation that is a group of very enthusiastic students who are very motivated with a lot of ideas, so there is always something going around. And I think if anyone is interested in arbitration or mediation or regulation, they should check our website and maybe join us in the future.
Hello everyone, my name is Carla Login. I'm currently pursuing my master's in international commercial arbitration in Stockholm. And I'm doing so because Dr. Warwas initiated me in the area of arbitration. I remember being at the launch of her book back in the days, being completely lost. I didn't know what arbitration is, but somehow I realized that I like it. What is this thing that is not really a court but still has adjudicative power? And being from a traditional background, this was completely innovation for me. And now that we all realize that arbitration is here to stay, and the multi-level regulation lectorate also made me realize this, I'm completely honored to be the first leader of the student projects in the area of ADR.
Hello everyone, my name is Joshua Trubhatacharya and I am a recent graduate of the law program at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. I hope that despite the current circumstances, everyone is doing well. Today, I have the pleasure to talk to you a bit about what I have learned from my alternative dispute resolution classes and throughout my involvement in the MLR activities. My first involvement with commercial law was probably within my first year itself, and at the time I had the privilege of having Dr. Warwas as my tutor. Despite my favoritism for the public international law and the international sphere in general, she patiently introduced myself and my peers to the corporate world and shared her experiences with us throughout our interaction. These interactions helped me enter the second and the third year with a more open mind towards the commercial courses, so much so that I actually ended up picking up the alternative dispute resolution minor alongside various other courses from the commercial specialization. The arbitration course was truly what invoked my interest in the commercial sector and more specifically dispute resolution. Dr. Warwas broke down complex subjects into smaller, more digestible bits, not only making the module more accessible to students like myself, but also enabling students to truly understand the essence of arbitration. So despite the complexity of the MLR, I benefited greatly from following the work of the Lectorate. I am sure that the work of the Lectorate, as well as Dr. Warwas, will continue enabling students like myself to not only access, but also perform well in these complex fields.
Hello everyone, my name is Andriana Curuțiu and I'm a fourth-year student in the International and European Law program at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. I joined the multi-level regulation student projects last spring in March as a podcast coordinator for ADR-related topics. As a podcast coordinator, I'm mainly involved in the logistical planning and implementation of podcast sessions. And at the same time, apart from the fact that it reiterated my enthusiasm in alternative dispute resolution, I particularly enjoyed the discussions within the podcast sessions and the discussions with the guest speakers. Being an ADR enthusiast, I find it extremely helpful to hear from professionals in the field talking about their experience, the skills required, and also providing some sort of guidance to students and professionals interested in pursuing a career in this field. Additionally, ADR methods have become especially and particularly popular in the past decades. So there are many differences, but also similarities in the way ADR methods are approached by countries and also on the regional level and also in different sectors. And I think it is really interesting to discuss the potential of ADR in the future and assess the similarities and the difference in the way countries and particular systems treat ADR in the way they resolve conflicts.
I'm really happy that we have been able to appoint Barbara Warwas as lector in multi-level regulation. And not only because she, as an internal candidate, came out the strongest from a really good field of both internal and external candidates, which goes to say something about the level of quality that we have of our staff. But most importantly, because the approach she has really adds value to what we are doing in education and research within this institution. All of the people we are training in the area of law, and these are about 2,000 students, we train them with a solid knowledge of the various aspects of the rule of law, a solid knowledge base. But that's not a sufficient perspective to be able to function well in today's society. And Barbara understands that. Barbara combines again, a good, solid theoretical knowledge of the law in its various aspects. But she goes beyond. She sees the importance of looking at the practice of how people work together, how people live together, what problems they encounter, and how they can devise and think of different ways to solve the problems. She will be working with lecturers and students in a trust mediation lab to do exactly that, to understand better how these mechanisms work, and to devise ways to work better together in future. So in a way, she will be contributing towards a better world. Big words, if you will, but that's her ambition, and I really support that.
Governance is vital to all. It organises society, structures our systems, and gives meaning to our daily lives. Needless to say, good governance is centrepiece. Barbara's research group, Multi-Level Regulation, takes this subject in an innovative manner by looking at how we can bridge the disconnect gap. Society is complex, multidimensional, and fluid. Rules and regulations have become equally complex, but they've also become too formal and ultimately distant from the people. Barbara will share her insights on how this needs to change. The research group mirrors and echoes the values of our institution to embrace diversity, include all voices, and broaden opportunity, to learn from our international community, and to embark together on making the world a more stable and safer place. We look forward to seeing the research group and the centre of expertise in which it is housed grow and develop, to share its wisdom and expertise, and to bring together different stakeholders and foster new ideas to help us move forward. We believe that only through working together and learning together can we offer our students and society at large sustainable solutions for the future. Barbara's group and the Centre of Expertise are steps in this direction. Barbara, we wish you good luck, lots of success and plenty of fun. Let's change. You, us, the world.
So that's it. Thank you for being with us today. If you have comments, questions, and ideas for collaboration, we really want to hear from you. Contact us and hopefully we will be able to work together towards improving the quality of our daily lives, our society, and professional practice. Thanks again for listening.